Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm here with my good brother, Dr. Michael Thomas. It's good to see you.
Yeah. Everything good?
Yeah, man, everything good,
All right.
everything cool. And it's really good to see you
Yeah.
in more than one sense. Not only as a brother,
Mm-hmm.
but as a young man who, to me, in my eyes, is a model of what I think we would like our young men
Oh,
and our young people to grow up to be. We went to school, went to college, went straight through, got your PhD, got some experience, and now back home to bring all that knowledge and experience back to your community. Welcome home, brother.
Yeah, man, it's a real significant blessing to be home.
Yes.
And just first of all, I've always had a significant love for, JTV and what they represent in the community, and also for what you represent in the community. I think I grew up with you in my ear, always being kind of a figure in the community of social commentary to allow us to become more awakened in ourselves, to never get comfortable, as they will say, with what we have accomplished, but always pushing forward, but always reaching back as well, never leaving anybody behind. And coming back home is the best thing that happened, and
Yes.
being able to come my wonderful wife and my 3 kids now is it's just a awesome opportunity to be back here and contribute to the community, not to take over or anything, but to contribute to the community, because there's significant a number of things that I've been able to garner over the years that I know that will significantly positively impact people and simply give people hope.
Yeah.
Hope to live and keep moving, and that's what we all should gear to do, because it's our community and we're supposed to take care of it.
Absolutely. And when you look at the community, what do you see as in terms of an assessment? With young people, with the people generally, with
Yeah.
us as a people generally. What
Well, I
from a
think
young person's
Yeah.
eyes,
Yeah.
from a professional eye, because I have learned over the years that you get when you get a certain amount of information, your perspective changes a little bit, and you get to see perhaps a little clearer
Yeah.
over what's really happening.
I think, the 15 years I was away, I was at home like 2 or 3 times a year at least. And not to say that I have, I think my perception of community as an individual, regardless of degrees of profession, is that our community continues to evolve and grow. And there are significant aspects of the community that are great. I think personally, some of the things that I really admire in terms of the community is the young spiritual entrepreneurship that is budding throughout the community from the young people. And that's really aspiring, as myself being a young entrepreneur as well, and people aspiring to be business owners. That's really good, and we need to continue to cultivate that. In terms of professionally, I think we've come a long way in terms of being able to develop our awareness of behavioral health, mental health, and how that impacts our whole communal functioning. But it needs to be more integrated into what we do, not just a subsection, because everything that we do, what we have in life, spiritually, economically, psychology, it all integrates because it's part of who we are as human beings. And the conversation needs to be able to be had. That's just normal, natural. That nothing, it does not, that has to happen when somebody's significantly injured or in the hospital, because those cases are so rare. But we need to have able to have an able conversation about people's wellness and well-being.
Continuous dialogue.
Continuous dialogue so becomes part of our constant fabric. It's not taboo. It's not, or if you think...
It's not a special event.
Yeah, it's not a special event. It's just part of our conversation. Just like we want health and fitness to be part of our conversation. Overall wellness incorporates health and fitness, but includes your spiritual health, includes your well-being and your mental health, which we could continue to have that conversation so people don't feel isolated. Because I think one thing that I know, just from our communities, is that a lot of people suffer in silence,
Yeah.
and they struggle with things that they shouldn't have to struggle with. Life is not meant to be done alone.
That's and I don't want to cut you off, but I want you to help with this point that we seem to be afraid to share our, for lack of a better word, darkest secret, or our challenges with each other. I don't know. Is it because we seem to laugh at each other's challenges, or we think that, well, if I tell Michael about some of the challenges I'm having, whether in my personal life, my home life, my professional life, that he will feel like he's better than me, or he'll laugh at me. Is that a sense of something that we need to overcome as a community? Because we don't talk about that. And you say we suffer in silence.
We suffer in silence not only because of our community. Being in a small community compounds just naturally. I mean, even where I was practicing had millions of people, and it still was hard for people to come to get help. In society in general, people have a hard time reaching out for help. Because when you reach out for help, you're saying that whatever I'm going through, I can't handle. And it's usually tough, it's usually personal. And it's hard for people to establish a safe, confidential place where they could come. And in our community, we, being so small, we have to really put a big onus on being confidential. Because if people are not feeling safe, if they don't feel like they can trust you, they're not going to open up. And that's where we need to make sure we protect that. And I think a lot of times in talking to people so far, that's maybe some of the big blocks that people, if they feel like they have a comfortable relationship and they have somebody trustworthy that they could come and get help, then they'll come out. And that's where we just have to continue to open the conversation. And sometimes some people
build that trust.
Yeah, and some people don't know where to get help or that they need help in the first place. They just think that maybe what they're going through is this is just my life, wow. This is just what I'm going through.
And they don't realize that many people share the same challenges that they're sharing.
And there is often a solution, But it's very humbling, to once you realize how humbling it is for somebody to bring, for example, their child to you to get assistance, or themselves come to someone, it's, as a clinician, it allows you to be really humble and privileged to have that opportunity to care for that person. And you treat it with the highest regard. And once people start to know that there are people out there who treat, and other physicians and clinicians on the island that share that same ideal of care and empathy and sincere well-being, wants you to function well, I think it will continue to happen. Continue to grow, because we have to, my concentration is children and family as a psychologist. And I really concentrate on early childhood and family work because that's essential. We could prevent a significant number of problems that we have later in adulthood and teenage years if we intervene early. And that's just significantly important.
Well, what would it mean for us to free our minds and become comfortable and confident in coming to a clinician or to someone who you trust and have confidence in, to share your challenges and have solutions and get assistance with those challenges? What would that mean to the community?
I'll just give you this example. It will mean a significant level of freedom that somebody will be able to accomplish within themselves. Some people self-actualize and realize that, wow, it's okay being me. I don't have to try to be somebody else. I'm not perfect, but I'm okay, and I'll continue to get better. I would say one of the biggest things that happen when people come into clinical work is a realization of significant freedom, a significant acceptance for who they are. And that freedom is priceless, because a lot of us struggle to try to change every single aspect about ourselves, don't appreciate who we are and the gifts that we have as a person, don't appreciate that, I may not be great at this. And we spend most of our time concentrating on the things that we're not good at, rather than accentuating and paying attention to the things that we're great at. It's a thing in psychology. If you pay attention to something more and more, you strengthen that thing more. If you pay attention to things that you're good at, the things that you don't pay attention to will eventually fade away. So most of our energy, how do we shift that? Hey, I might not be great at this. I might feel bad about myself in these areas. But what am I good at? And especially for our young people.
Oh, what's good about me?
Yeah, what's good about me? Especially for our young people, we need to shift the conversation in terms of saying, well, they're not good at this, they're not good at that. We have to, I practice from a very strength-based perspective, meaning that I use your strengths to help you overcome the things that you may not be really good at, rather than just concentrating on all the things they're not good at. Because we know what we're not good at. And if we could have changed them, we would have changed them a long time ago. But it's not that simple. So it's the clinical work, and I'll say one of the biggest things is freedom. And one of the things I saw for parents who bring their children, who are able to learn some skills to be able, is a sense of peace that they have the ability, if the problem comes back, to create a change in their environment, lasting change. Because when you're a parent and you have a kid that's struggling behaviorally or with some other emotional problems, you get calls from the school, you worry about when they're going to get suspended, you worry about all types of things that could happen, and it's a constant journey for them, and it's difficult. And being a parent is really a real difficult order. And so when they finally come, when they realize that we can get help, and it doesn't have to stay this way, and it can get better.
It's a load off their mind.
Yeah. It's not easy, but it's necessary.
I look at a lot of the children in our community, and even myself growing up, looking back at my childhood, and realize that our parents loved us, and they did all they could for us. But there were some things, now that I know about those things, I know that there are some things that they could have done differently that may have developed me in a way where some of the insecurities that I have now as an adult, I wouldn't have had.
Yeah.
And I would have felt free more, the freedom you're talking about, I would have felt freer to be myself.
Yeah.
What are some of those challenges you're identifying in your areas of work in terms of managing our children's behavior and how we respond to our children at certain stages of their development?
Yeah,
and the harm that does.
Well, you touched on a lot of major things and a lot of major themes. I'll say one of the things that I often find in clinical work is that parents often get mad at their kids the most when they see their kids exemplifying traits and behaviors that they have not yet resolved. So they'll be like, well, they have an anger problem. Well, you have an anger problem. Or, they get really angry and isolate, or they get really sad. A lot of times what happens with our parents, they do the best. Being a parent now, you do the best that you can. And not to say that your best is the best that you can. That's great. And you're going to, keep trying because those are your kids. But not to say, but there's always areas that all of us, including myself, can continue to improve upon. And what we need to do is be able to have a conversation about this. So when you're talking about areas of your development, if you see your kid or child struggling with something, whether it's behavior management or classroom, or they're usually sad more times than not, or they're just, you could tell something is wrong, but you don't know what it is. And it's just hard for you to deal with. And you could be like, well, I used to be this way. I used to struggle with it. I think one of the hardest things for parents to do is admit to their kids or have a conversation, I struggle with that as well. And that becomes really insecure for parents, because now the power battle is kind of different. And it makes it hard for them to realize, we're not perfect. And we are
as a parent, you should portray authority and a person in control of everything.
But I'll tell you, when a kid turns 10, 11, one of the most important things for them is authenticity. Because if you're trying to talk to them and tell them all these things and all these rules and guidelines, but it doesn't match up to what you're presenting, it diminishes the same authority that you're trying to assert. So, the easiest thing I tell parents, have honest conversations. have honest conversations with your kids as much as you can. So because that will help your relationship increase and be more authentic. In
So
terms of
my pretentiousness is harmful to my
yeah.
relationship with the child.
Yeah, trying to be a parent. You know, there are different parenting styles. I know a lot of people, you know, try to be authoritarian. You mean just, you know, my way or the highway, you know, but that usually doesn't work. The best, you know, type of parent is a parent that has a balance between having authority, but also having a level of freedom and balance between that relationship. And that is more so helpful because there are boundaries, but there's still space for us to have conversation. See, I tell people all the time, like, if a kid doesn't know how to read, we'll teach them how to read. If a kid doesn't know how to do math, we teach them how to do math. If a kid doesn't know how to behave and regulate their emotions, what do we do usually?
We punish them.
We punish them. But the problem still remains because they're still not being taught. And what you're saying in our community is that we had a big connection in an interwoven community that taught us ourselves, and the community taught us skills of how to govern ourselves. We were taught how to take care of one another based on our community. We were taught that, you know, you need to look out for each other. You're taught respect for each other. You were taught different things, how to regulate strong emotions. You were taught how to resolve conflict in a healthy way. Now, because our community continues to evolve, those lessons are not as apparent as they used to be. And now, of our family dynamics being changed, those lessons are not being taught as well or as intently as they used to be. So now we have to start to augment those things in our community where we're teaching our kids and our families how to do these things. We can't expect that someone that's having a kid at 16 and 17 who has to work 2 or 3 jobs and is struggling themselves to have the level of patience and time to be all of those things plus all these things to their kids. It's impossible.
So you got to be a provider, a teacher, a molder, a disciplinarian,
Yeah.
guide,
Yeah.
all these things
Yeah,
while
all-
they work in 3 jobs.
Yeah, and we could say, well, they shouldn't have had kids, and they shouldn't. We could blame the problem. We could say, well, these are the reasons why. Blaming the problem is not going to solve what we need to.
It still continues.
We need to augment ourselves and create environments now where we're intently teaching those skills, and we're raising a generation that needs to learn those skills. So one of the things in terms of psychology and well-being is intently in social emotional wellness for early childhood people and young people is teaching them these skills.
How to behave.
Yeah, teaching them how to positively use their words and vocabulary to resolve conflict. Conflict is not resolved by physical violence. We teach them how to share and empathy. You intently create.
Teach them manners, respect,
all of that.
consideration, thoughtfulness.
It has to be. It has to be there because when in our society, when we in the 1960s just starting to get electricity and cable and all that type of stuff, that wasn't there. There was 1 or 2 messages that we had to fight with. Now in this open one world experience, our voice of what is right in the community and expected is being, bombarded with a lot of different messages. And as a kid, do you expect them to know which one to choose? So it has to be intentional.
Gotta be a lot of explanation.
Yeah, it has to be intentional in our engagement. We have to be wanting to cultivate individuals and children that are independent, strong, and able to handle this world that we're preparing them for. And punishing them just simply for the sake of punishing is not going to be the solution. But I understand that people get frustrated. But when you're at a point of frustration and it's not helping, that's where you could seek out some help from somebody that is willing and able to really intervene and help that child prosper.
To help you as a parent,
Yeah.
able to be in control of yourself,
Yeah.
to help you to manage
Yeah.
the challenges you're having with your child.
Yeah.
Now, teaching those things to children, of course, we would have to learn them ourselves.
Yeah.
And so where you see us going as a community in terms of recognizing the challenges that you just spoke of, recognizing the information that we need for ourselves as adults to be able to impart that information to our children and have the time to impart that information and to practice it, to see it into practice as a community. It seems to me that it's something that we would have to institutionalize.
Yeah.
Where you see us going in terms of achieving that type of goal.
Well, basically, just what you said. I mean, it has to become intentional in our engagement. Meaning, you know, from I was also a director of a community mental health agency before I came home, and one of our things was we integrated into institutions that already existed. Instead of starting something new, we integrated it into things that we already had. So those systems and institutions such as schools, churches, mentoring programs, let's integrate social emotional wellness as a part of that in our curriculum. Let's integrate that to make sure it's intentional on what we do.
So we need to develop those programs in our institutions, in our schools, in our churches, and all the social activities that we do. We need to integrate that teaching so that it becomes a part of us as adults and as other child growing up. We're going to take a break for a word from our sponsors, and then when we come back, I want to talk about the whole aspect of what it would take to integrate those teachings in what we teach already in our school, because it seems to me that would be the major institution that we would need to utilize in order to achieve the goals that you're talking about. Keep it locked right in the spotlight. We're going to be right back. I'm having this fantastic conversation, as I thought I would, with Dr. Michael Turnable, clinical psychologist here in the Virgin Islands. We're going to talk some more about how we could get some of these lessons taught in our schools and taught to our children. And we're going to talk some about what he's doing in the community, what kind of institution is he building so that he can help us to achieve some of these goals. Don't go away. Spotlight will be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by Tortola Concrete Limited, the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, and CCT Global Communications.
Welcome back to Spotlight. If you just joined us, I'm Edjuenka, and I'm talking with Dr. Michael Turnable. He's the clinical psychologist, young brother, son of the soil, just returned home. And we're going to talk about some of what he's doing in the community and what his plans are. But we were talking about managing our children's behavior, and we left off talking about how we need to inculcate in all of our institutions, in our lives, this knowledge that we were taught as children when at the time when the village raised a child, so to speak, and how we dropped the ball on teaching those things, and now we see the consequences of not passing that information on to our children, and the result that we are having with the social ills that's developing in our community. We have a lot of teachers that are parents that have the same challenges like every other parent, and perhaps need that information like every other parent and every other adult. My question has been for the longest now, for many years. Since we as parents have to work to support our kids, and they spend a considerable portion of their time with the teachers in schools, how much more responsibility do we need to give our teachers? How much more training we need to give them to be able to handle that responsibility, and what the compensation for that responsibility ought to be?
Yeah, well, that's it's interesting because last week, Thursday, I had the great opportunity to share with the wonderful people over there on Virgin Gorda for their Teacher Professional Day. And we talked about teachers' well-being and mental health. And teachers are already now so stretched in terms of their responsibility. To ask them to do something totally separate would be too much. What we need to do is integrate it into our curriculum. That becomes part of our curriculum. Now, some people may ask how
and
that...
get separate teachers to teach that aspect of it. It have to be a separate course?
No, it could be the same teachers, but it'll be how the teacher is trained. It'll be part of how they integrate it. So when you're teaching math, for example, what we did in terms of our social emotional foundation for early learning is how we instituted this into curriculums and classrooms. It's not something separate, but simple things in terms of engagement. Kids, the foundation of this prism, for example, is creating a healthy social environment in the classrooms and how that looks practically. In terms of simple things that teachers can do, but we need to integrate it. For example, if you come into class, if you're a student, and you just come into your class and you just sit down, and you then the teacher comes in and be like, let's turn to page turns, let's start working. You know we have our national anthem and stuff that we do. But how different would it be in terms of, for example, if your teacher greeted you at the door, shook your hand, and asked you how your day was the night before you came in? Now, that may seem like, oh, why would I do that? Kids, especially kids at a young age, need to know that they're important and they're valued. So things like engagement and meeting kids and talking to them and individually identifying them, for example, is a great way to create that environment, because kids learn best when they're emotionally safe. And social emotional health and wellness and all that is taught when environment is set up for such. When we know the expectations, where if we're doing math, that kids are creating an environment where they learn how to work together in a group. And even if there's a disagreement between the two students, the teacher teaches them in a way that allows them to resolve the situation in a manner that they will want them to do as an adult. So it's a part of, it's a whole philosophy around how we teach. It's not to say separately a different course, but the teacher first is the significant impetus behind how that does. Also, the administration and the whole philosophy in terms of how we govern, how we design our classrooms in creating that community and making it intentional. So as part of what we do is consultation in terms of how that looks, how is it implemented. And what we know is that it cannot come in as a separate task for teachers, because teachers have so much to do already. It has to be seen that, I tell teachers, listen, if we spend enough 2 or 3 days, a couple of weeks planning for this before kids come, it will help you in the long run. Because if you spend 3 weeks, a month, for example, preparing your classroom and this and another and all that type of stuff, and what could happen in terms of negative behavior and how you're going to handle that, when it starts to happen, you've already prepared and planned for it, rather than have to spend all that time on the back end dealing with negative behavior. So I tell parents all the time, it's better to get all the skills up front, go through the challenges of changing and implementing it, so you could prevent how much time you're going to have to spend in later. Because either you deal with it on the front end, or you can deal with it at the back end. And a lot of us, we want to deal with problems in the back end because that's when it's apparent. To me, I tell parents and teachers and everyone, the best problem is the one that was avoided.
So prevention is worth upon a cure. So prevention is worth upon a cure. And of course, we've learned from, we've always heard Jesse Jackson, for example, say you could spend the money now to have productive kids in the society, realizing their full potential, or you could spend the money in jails. And which is that with kids just sitting around languishing and not producing for their country. So that's a choice that we have to make. What are you doing right now? What are your plans for the future while you're going to be here?
So right now, I've had the gracious opportunity to open my own behavioral health facility. It's called the Wellness Center for Behavioral Health, and we'll be opening next month, March, in the middle of next month. And we are a center that's concentrated on children and family and their well-being. Overall, what our mission is to make sure we allow everyone in our community to realize optimal well-being with integrated healthcare systems. And our solution is that we're starting with psychology and our psychological well-being. And that's curating where we'll be providing individual, family, group therapy to children and families, but also the school-based and early childhood mental health consultation, where we'll be able to do diagnosis, behavior and behavioral consultation and classroom consultation and training for teachers and parents. So we're trying to create a community with this facility that will be able to branch out and grow. My thing is that I'm, simply as a psychologist, I became a psychologist because I love helping people. The reason why that we're opening the wellness center is that I know that there are people that need help, but they need to find an authentic and confidential place and a safe place to do it. And once we could build that and build capacity, we'll start to make a significant difference. Because my ultimate goal is how can I impact and this facility impact and allow us here in the Virgin Islands and when we continue to expand to live better. That's the motto for the clinic, to live better, to live a better life for children and families, because you don't have to struggle by yourself because it's too hard. And life is not meant to be done alone. Life is not meant to be done alone. And if you could have different people like psychologists, pastors, teachers, all of us serve a significant function in our society to make us.
And if we are working together.
Yeah, and if we're working together as one team and letting people know that there's a place to get help, that nothing is wrong with them because they need help. I tell people, if your leg is broken, you go to Peebles, right? If your heart is broken, if you need some help managing different life challenges that's not necessarily physical, you go to people who can manage and optimize your behavioral health. There's no reason that you should spend your life living below your optimum wellness, whether it's for your children or your family. There's no reason to do that when there are avenues and people who are here to help. And us at the clinic becoming credentialed with the National Health Insurance allows everyone
to have access.
to have access. And it doesn't require you to have any money. You just need your NHI card. And that is a significant blessing because now the access is there. So the hardest step is the first step to say, how can you help me optimize? And I like to tell people, listen, I'm not telling that you're crazy or this and another. How can I help you live your life better? How can I help your child live their life better? So how can I help them optimize that when they're 18, 19, that they're hitting the ground running as best a chance that they can get? And that's what we need. If people struggle at different points, and there might be different significant mental illness, which I also treat as well, but how can we prevent that from happening? That if you're
But
going
getting to that point,
your child is going through they're going to need some help adjusting to new environments or new social environment. They're struggling, or some self-images, or some behavioral problems, or some attention problems. Things are not really significant as a significant problem, but you know that you need some help or intervention, or your family is going through some significant challenges that you know that you could get some help with, and you're tired of trying to do it by yourself. This environment is created to cultivate healthy children and families.
how can someone get in touch with you?
Well, our facility is opening again. As we say, we're going to be located in the Salva George Plaza and police headquarters, right down Main Street, in the Miss Esme shop where Mr. DeCastro used to have his shop as well. So we're in the lower level. Also, we'll be online. It's twcbh.com, or they could just email myself at mturnable@twcbh.com. We're going to have a grand opening and make sure we.
So when that comes on stream, we'll be able to get more
definitely
particular.
give some more information.
We're on the turning the clock, and as I figured, there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
But I expect that we're going to have regular conversations, because I would really like to get all of the persons, because they're about. I know right now I know of 3 of you who are sharing the same ideas, have the same types of training, and I think we need to pool that resource to impact the territory on a mass level. And I'd like to be a part of that movement using Spotlight and Umoja to achieve, to help you all achieve
and I want
those
to
goals.
say to you, I'm always thankful and grateful for the opportunity to share, and to JTV and the wonderful people here. And one part of the Wellness Center for Behavioral Health Clinic, what we're going to be doing is make sure forums like this, that how we can transmit information to children and families to live better.
Yes.
Because I could see 1 people, or I could see 2 people in a group, or I could see 10 people in a group. But this forum allows people to get help from the comfort of their home and learn different skills. So when we could have practical conversations to help them, that's empowering the community, and that's what we want to do.
And I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, thank you,
My brother.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
All right.
It's good to see you.
Yes, man.
Really good to see you. Good to be here with you as well. Dr. Michael Turnable. We're going to be talking to him a lot more and bringing a lot more programming that's going to assist our community, assist our children in realizing their full potential here in the Virgin Islands. So make sure you keep it locked in here to Spotlight and the JTV, and of course Umoja as well. I'm going to take another break for a word from our sponsors. When I come back, I'm going to come back with Dr. Carl Dawson, and we're going to be talking about HNSCC and the great things that's happening to the college and all the forward movements that's going on and the celebrations that we're having for the 25th anniversary and upcoming events that you need to be participating in. Keep it locked right here to Spotlight. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands and CCT Global Communications.